So next up, we have a very special treat for you. So some of you might remember that in November, Hedera made headlines as Canary Capital filed for the first ever HBAR ETF S1 with the SEC. So this next conversation is going to be a discussion between the CEO of Canary Capital, Steven McClurg, and the Chief Business Officer of the HBAR Foundation. So before you welcome them on stage, I would like to let you know that they have a special treat for you. So they have very cool beanies from Canary Capital that they will be throwing out into the audience. And I will also be walking around on the side. So if you would like a beanie, come and see me. So let's welcome Steven and Gregg to the stage.
Gotta hop y'all up.
All right. Fantastic. I've been looking forward to this conversation for quite some time, as I'm sure many in this audience have as well. A topic of when ETF. So maybe we'll start with just a quick show of hands from the audience. Who currently holds an ETF? I know I do.
Oh, yeah, I do too.
It's an efficient wrapper. And we are really excited to now have one of the experts in the ETF field and truly the convergence of blockchain and traditional financial markets. So one more time, welcome Steven McClurg.
Thank you.
So Steven, you've made some headlines recently, a 19B4 filing, and I think there was a little bit of some crypto Twitter noise and maybe even confusion around the 19B4 filing. So share us a little bit, some knowledge around what just occurred.
Yeah, so definitely angst. Why is there no HBAR 19B4? Well, really, our strategy on trying to get an HBAR ETF wasn't to file something, get it out there quickly, let the SEC say no. Our strategy really was to put forward, a proposal in form of an S1, wait until we actually got some positive feedback, do some education, and then proceed when we feel like, it's a good time to proceed. Because, if anybody's ever worked in government or knows how government works, what they hate more than anything is civilians trying to push them to do things. So we try to work with regulators as opposed to against them. And so this was the way we did it. We also wanted to wait for the right exchange to work with, and we felt like NASDAQ was the right one. So the way that a 19B4 actually works is an ETF issuer is the one that files the S1, and if it's not a security, or going back, if it is a security, then all you have to do is file an S1. It's called a 1940 Act fund, and then it just goes live in 75 days. If it's not a security, the exchange has to file an exception for you to list that ETF, which is called a 19B4 filing. So we're in charge of the S1, but the exchanges actually file the 19B4. So it takes a lot of effort on our part to educate the exchanges on what it is that we're trying to do and get them to work with us on that particular filing.
So it was NASDAQ, in fact, that filed the 19B4 several days ago.
That's exactly right.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah.
Now, there are a wide variety of assets that you could choose to utilize and wrap in an ETF. Why HBAR?
Well, the quick answer is, when we filed this was back under Gensler, when Gensler was the chair of the SEC, and the SEC was very strict on what they would accept and what they wouldn't. Obviously, Bitcoin took a long time. I've been working on a Bitcoin ETF since 2017, and finally launched one about a year ago. from now. And under the Valkyrie umbrella, which was I was a founder of Valkyrie. When looking at what the SEC, particularly Gensler, because he really ruled the SEC, it was more of a I'm the chairman, I'm in charge, everything goes through me type organization. And he had stated publicly that Bitcoin, ETH, and Litecoin were not securities. But why, right? I understood all the reasons why Bitcoin and Litecoin weren't, because of the way that they issued their tokens. It was all mined, no pre-mining. Actually, technically, the very first Litecoin was pre-mined, because there was no other way to reverse engineer the code. But that doesn't really matter too much. ETH was grandfathered in, and we're like, okay, well, what else out there is not a security? Well, the way that HBAR actually distributed its tokens in a fair way and registered with agencies actually made it not a security, because you registered with the CFTC. And to my knowledge, HBAR is the only token that's done that. So it made it just a really easy call for us to say, yeah, this is not a security. The SEC, even under Gensler, should accept it.
Now, what do you think of the American first narrative that has gotten a lot of headlines recently as we have a new administration in house?
Yeah, I mean, the America First is really interesting because the Trump administration has made several statements that they're going to somehow support blockchains that are made in the U.S. And of course, HBAR is. So that's another really interesting development in the current administration. So not only is HBAR not a security, it's also an American-made security. And I mean, there's been a lot of things thrown around. We don't know what's going to stick, but there is a possibility that you won't pay capital gains on when you sell HBAR, when you buy and sell. So I don't know if that's actually going to happen, but it's definitely part of the narrative that's being tossed around. My guess is there certainly will be some tax benefits for trading tokens on a chain that was made in the U.S. We just don't know yet.
It's an exciting time.
I love it.
Now, there are about 15 trillion of assets that exist in ETF wrappers today. About just over 100 billion that's in blockchain-related products. So clearly, there's a lot of room to run. When you think about the population that exists that has assets in brokerage accounts and may not yet have interacted in a Web3 environment,
yeah.
What does that mean in terms of your strategy around bringing this product to market? Why is an ETF an effective wrapper?
Yeah. Well, I'll just speak to that from the standpoint of myself. Okay. So number one, I'm an individual that has a retirement account. I prefer to hold ETFs in my retirement account as opposed to going through these like funky, crypto for IRAs. They're very expensive. So ETFs make it really easy to hold in my retirement account, first of all. It also makes it easier for me to trade. I would much rather trade on Schwab or Interactive Brokers than going to a crypto exchange. I hate to say it, but it's just, they're easier to work with and they're easier to send money back and forth to your bank. But even more importantly, Canary's primary business is actually a hedge fund. So, we launched, hedge fund was first. We saw a window for ETFs, which is why we launched ETFs, but we've been running a hedge fund for years. And even in our hedge fund, because what we do is we marry bonds and crypto. So in times of high volatility, we trade more bonds. In times of, in bull markets, we trade more crypto. And it makes it easier for me to trade the crypto ETFs than it is to be on an exchange or OTC. Because if I want to move into bonds very quickly, my account's at Bank of New York Mellon. I can trade the crypto ETFs, trade out of them, buy bonds same day. If I'm on an exchange, I have to settle that trade, move the money from the account to the bank, back over to Bank of New York. A week later, things could have changed, and I still don't have my bonds. So as a hedge fund manager, it also makes it way easier for me to run a diversified strategy. So look, there's just a lot of good reasons why an ETF wrapper makes a sense to a lot of people.
And what has been the experience of bringing these products to market? As you mentioned, you've been one of the pioneers in the space bringing the Bitcoin ETF to the market. Certainly now with a number of different products. We're, of course, very excited about HBAR here. But in doing so, you're interacting with a variety of different regulators, with different financial institutions, truly bridging Web3 and traditional finance. What has been the experience? What has been the feedback you've received from these counterparties?
Yeah, I mean, it's been good and bad, right? Bitcoin was an absolute slog. I mean, it took forever. You know, a lot of pain, a lot of hours, a lot of money spent just to get this one product into the market. And in the meantime, you know, this was again back in the Valkyrie days. You know, we were like, okay, well, we can't get Bitcoin yet, so what can we do? Well, Bitcoin futures. So we were like the first NASDAQ traded Bitcoin futures ETF. Then we're like, okay, well, what about Bitcoin miners? You know, there's a lot of publicly traded miners. We actually launched the first Bitcoin on the balance sheet ETF before it was popular. And we're like, you know, one day they're going to, you know, companies, publicly traded companies are going to put Bitcoin on their balance sheet. So we launched the ETF. Tesla did it. There weren't a whole lot. It didn't really work out. We shut down the ETF. Well, now if we had just kept it a little bit longer, it would have been awesome. But it's a slog. It's a hit industry. You're going to have hits. You're going to have lots of misses. But I will say this time around has been a lot easier, just because, you know, like breaking that barrier with Bitcoin, and then taking a step back and looking and saying, okay, yeah, what else would work? Yeah, Litecoin, HBAR. That makes a lot of sense. Under the new administration, you know, it could be anything. I'm actually bearish, by the way, on a Solana ETF. A lot of people ask me that, like, oh, you filed for Solana. Like, yeah, I don't know if the SEC is going to approve it. I just, you know, I don't. There's others that I think they will approve, and I just don't think that's one of them. I mean, I could be wrong, but there's probably a 20% chance. But it is a slog in some cases. In some cases, it's easy if you choose the right vehicles.
You have been somewhat of a prophet in terms of being able to think a little bit around the timing. When you look into the HBAR ETF and what the various milestones mean in terms of timing, what do you foresee as the road ahead?
Yeah. So my education is I'm a behavioral economist, and all I see is patterns. So I just notice patterns, and patterns repeat themselves. And I remember talking, you know, just talking to Gregg and the team, man, like back in September when I was like, you know, like, hey, would you guys review some of the, some things before we file? And we were talking about timing, and I was like, yeah, you know, it'll probably be like October when we file. It'll probably be February before the SEC gets back to us. It'll probably be February before we get a 19B4 out there. I mean, it's not so much predictive. It's just like remembering patterns of how things work, and after doing this for a long time. Sort of like, you know, like if you're in construction and you're building a house, you can like look at a piece of land and be like, okay, you're building a 3,000 square foot house. This is how long it's going to take to lay the foundation. It's going to put up the walls, put up the roof. You'll be able to move in on this date. You know, it's not an exact science, but you kind of know because you've done it a few times.
I love that analogy. And you know, looking at the filing, you listed a couple of major firms, certainly the NASDAQ in terms of the exchange, but then there were custody providers, including BitGo, one of our governing council members, and Coinbase. You know, what has been the experience of having, maybe as a contractor, now these service providers that are there to help you accelerate and meet these timelines?
Yeah. By the way, all these guys have been awesome, right? I mean, BitGo has been amazing to work with. Coinbase has been amazing to work with. You know, as soon as we started going, we're like, look, we're doing this thing no matter what. Are you with us or not? And they're like right there with us. You know, introducing us to other service providers that we may not have worked with in the past. You know, even our fund admin, US Bank. You know, I've worked with them for several years. You know, they were very quick in getting things, you know, up and running there. All the market makers. Yeah, I mean, it's been really easy. You know, a lot of them are very positive on this development and are ready for, you know, new products to come in crypto.
Now, I imagine there are a lot of supporters in this audience and listening in online as well that really want to see the HBAR ETF on NASDAQ be an enormous success. How can we help? What's the call to action to each one of us?
Yeah, just stay up with the news. I'm not allowed to tell you to buy anything right now because it's I'm just not allowed to do that. But yeah, just stay up on the news. You know, what's going to happen soon though is hopefully the SEC accepts the 19B4. You've probably seen the news of some of the other crypto ETFs where a couple of times they've been rejected, then they've been accepted.
Now, there was an amended filing. What does that usually mean when there's an amended S1?
It just means that we're putting some more information in there. That's all, you know. Can't really talk too much about that. But as far as the 19B4 goes, within 2 weeks, we hope that the SEC recognizes it, and then what happens is they open up for a public comment period, which lasts for 21 days. So I would ask everybody to go online to the SEC site when that happens and make your comments known. That is the best thing that you can do.
And then the game begins with ensuring that, as an individual, all of our brokers have access to these products. And I know, for one, I'll be calling up my securities broker and saying, let's get some HBAR ETF available to me, and I'm excited for that day.
Yeah. And by the way, if you have like a state representative who's on the Crypto Council, you might want to let them know that you support this.
All right. Well, Steven, thank you again for your time today. Looking forward to when ETF is now live, and appreciate all of the hard work that you and your team have done.
Well, thank you so much.